Hello, my friend.
It's like the night voice you have on.
Oh my goodness. I know it's funny. We were just having a conversation before starting this, and I realized that I almost do slip into that late night radio DJ mode as soon as I know that I'm bringing us together to sort of bring us into this experience. And so I'm going to go ahead and get my late night DJ radio voice on to say, come join us, because today we're going to be talking about all the things that go bump in the night that scare us, the fear, the anger, the frustration with life. We're going to be exploring that. So I'm going to invite each one of you that's listening right now. You don't have to close your eyes, but I'm going to invite you to put your hand on your heart. Just notice your breath moving, no judgment, don't have to change it. Just be you. Just do you in this moment and do it with awareness. Do it with awareness of your breath, our vital life force. How's that moving? Be curious. How's my breath right now? And how's my heart? That powerhouse of electricity, that vital beating that helps us move our breath through our body. Just bring your awareness to both your heart and your breath. Being curious how they're working together right now to keep you alive. And are you ready to play?
Let's do it.
Let's rock and roll.
So,
boy.
before we got started, I'll elaborate a little bit for everybody. But before we got started, well, actually, after our last podcast, which we haven't released yet, which we will release, we were talking about. Tanya was asking, do we want to release it? Because one of the people that we follow, she had mentioned like she doesn't release any podcast unless she's, I don't think she said in a high vibe, but just basically, feeling it and yeah, like not a forced thing. And what I told Tanya is when she asked me last week, do you want to do the podcast? Because we were both kind of in this stillness space, right? We weren't like in the trenches, but we were for sure coming out of it. And in this just very still being, for lack of a better word, place. And I said, yes, I want to record it. But
as did I.
Yep. And our jovial selves probably weren't as elaborate on that podcast as they have been in the past or in the future. And so she had said when she went to Annapolis, like, hey, pause that podcast. Don't let Zuri, edit it and stuff, because we weren't necessarily in our air quotes normal, high vibe self.
True story.
And I told Tanya, true story. Yeah. Hashtag true story. And what I told her is because it could go both ways, right? It could go, yes, we weren't in our high vibe. You want to be in that, playful energy. And also we weren't doing it from a place of, listen, I really need to protect myself. I call it protect the asset, right? We're all the assets. Protect our asset, protect the asset. And we weren't forcing ourselves to do it. We were just in a still place. And I think, like I've always said, that being raw, real, and unedited of, sometimes if the desire is still there and you aren't in a high vibe, it's totally fine, right? Things can still be, you can still get work done. You can still, do things in your business or in your life that you want to do. And so I don't want to say I encouraged, I was okay with either way, but I thought that I think it would still be good to release it and then have this as an addendum after we've kind of both come out of our stillness. And now we're at that 30,000 foot view. And we can now give a little bit more insight onto what your experience has been with the travel in Annapolis. So without further ado,
I want to introduce a couple of concepts to our listeners. The first concept we call the ceiling fan. And with that, so in our previous house, we had a ceiling fan that had a forward and a reverse way of spinning. And I have likened that ceiling fan to our experiences with emotions, um, with our experience to change and transformation, which also then brings in the second concept, which is a lot of times we're very focused on what we don't want. So when we've spent most of our lives avoiding feeling a certain way because we don't want to feel that way, or not wanting to feel a certain way, not wanting to experience certain things, not wanting um, our reality to be the way that it currently is. When we spend a lot of time in that I don't want, it both makes for a very uncomfortable place to be because we're constantly resisting what is, but it also creates a fertile breeding ground of what we do want. Because as soon as we figure out what we don't want, it makes it a little bit easier to start asking, what do we want? So with the ceiling fan, when I would have it blowing during the summer, I would have it blowing one direction so as to bring the cooler air up. And then I would reverse it. Well, I usually always had the ceiling fan on high. And when I would hit the reverse button to have it spin the other direction, it would have to slow down and almost, well, not almost, it would have to come to a complete stop for a split second, for a moment, before it then started spinning the other direction and gaining speed in the other way. Our life and transformation is very similar to this. When we have spent most of our life on high in the I don't wants, spinning, avoiding feeling a certain way, doing certain things in resistance, then we almost have to come to this place of stillness. We have to slow down the momentum of the I don't want, the resistance to what is. We have to go, you know what, here we are. I'm sitting in a shitty diaper right now, whatever that may be. And then being able to be in that still point, which is where we were a week ago when we recorded the episode about my experience in Egypt, where I was talking about finding safety to be who I am. Also, realizing what I don't want and observing others struggling with their own wants and don't wants, where they felt safe, where they didn't feel safe. And so that still point was kind of that time in between leaving and coming back from Egypt. I had a couple of days before we recorded that podcast. And then a couple of days later, I left for Annapolis. And I've had, as the fan has started to spin, I've been asking myself, what do I want? And that is a little bit about what today's episode is going to entail. The other side of the spin. I call it like the algebraic equation. We're always trying to solve for x, and sometimes x is on the left of the equation and sometimes it's on the right. So,
And also talk about how, when you were talking about when you were in Egypt, you didn't want to make people upset or the fitting in part, right? So we are doing it from a place of, I don't want others to be upset, but then now we're upset or we are disappointed or we are feeling some of those lower vibration emotions because we don't want others to feel them.
yes.
And now you've kind of swung now to the other side of, okay, I know I'm learning and figuring out what I want. And now, because that is now doesn't cause people to feel that way, right? But they might have, because of their beliefs, their perceptions, they might get upset. They might feel disappointment. And this is what we have talked about probably on numerous podcasts, right? it's the feelings are going to exist one way or the other, but in this position that you are currently in, at least you get to have what you want while those feelings get experienced. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's, but like, and you're not, and I'm also not advocating for people to just be like, well, this is what I want, flip it, and be like, well, too bad, but also if we're going to feel these emotions either way, because this is part of the human experience, we might as well have what we want while we're experiencing these emotions. So you want to talk about now where you are in the pendulum has swung the other way.
Yeah. That's another thing that you and I talk a lot about. Sometimes we have to, whatever side of the stick that we've been on, like say the subject in this case is freedom to be who we truly are. And if we've been on the side of the stick that says it is not okay to be who we are, sometimes we have to swing far over to the other side of the stick that for some people feels like it's like you're in my face with who you are. And we have to go all the way to the other side so that we can come back to the middle.
I want to say something else real quick.
Yes.
Is that having compassion for the people that are now getting to, my husband always says this. He's like, I feel like I'm always running a marathon at a sprint pace with no training with you. And having compassion for our loved ones and the people that we are around, that when we are on this self-exploration journey, that they might, and it's no problem, right? They may not be at the same pace that we are. And so having that compassion when they do start getting really upset, when they do start, those feelings in them start coming up because now we are changing and evolving, and they get to have their own experience and get it or not get it, if ever, but I think that that's something to, because I think sometimes I forget that, right? I am doing that work and sometimes I forget, like, hey, why is he so upset about this? Or why is he, because sometimes it takes them a little bit of a hot second to catch up. So,
yeah. Yeah, my husband, like when we're outside running, the man could run circles around me. And I'm used to, I've been short in stature all my life. And so walking really fast and moving quickly is not something that I am unaccustomed to. But yet the man can still run circles around me when we go out for a run. And when it comes to processing emotions, yeah, I can probably run circles around him sometimes. And so, yeah, it's good to note that, because so what I've been experiencing here in Annapolis, I had the experience in Egypt of what don't I want? How don't I want to travel? How I don't want to be compromising myself, because that produces anger within me, and it's seeming like it's the fault, air quotes, of someone else. But anytime I'm experiencing anger or frustration or sadness in my body, it's mine. Like, this is a concept that's really, it's definitely a challenge for some people to grasp in the beginning, that we are the creators of our emotions. And a lot of that, like ready-made mix, when you think about baking a cake out of a box, all the ingredients are already there. And you just add water and put it in the oven, maybe an egg. With emotions, when we're learning about emotions and we're starting to come into awareness of how we feel, we oftentimes think that someone else has made us feel a certain way, but that never can really actually happen, what's making us feel a certain way is our own internal chemistry. And this could be the voice of our mother, the voice of our father, the experience we had with our culture, our religious, our loved ones, um, that are sort of like those archetypes, that voice that comes up from behind you. And it's so prevalent, and oftentimes we don't even realize that it's there. So for me, with anger and dealing with, I mean, anger is a big emotion.
Big
It's
time.
a really big emotion. And when you've spent a lot of time, um, polyvagal theory, some things that we talk about in Wellness from Within, when you've spent a lot of time in a state of freeze, just sort of numbed out to your life, going through the motions, the next step up from freeze is flight. Think about any animal that needs to survive. They're going to go into their survival instincts, which are going to say first fight. If I cannot match or meet my opponent, then I'm going to flee. I'm going to run away. And if that doesn't work, then I'm just going to shut down so that I don't feel imminent death, which is coming. And when we've spent a good portion of our lives in that frozen state, in that resistant state, in that wanting to just remove ourselves from feeling a certain way, when we get to the point of coming out of that, we also have to pass through anger. And as I said, that's a huge emotion. And so I was laying in bed the other night asking myself, what's on the other side of anger? Because we have like freeze, we have resistance, frustration, wanting to push away, and then we have anger. And so I was asking myself, what's on the other side of anger when we come back out? And I'm like, it's freedom, it's peace, and that might be a little ways out from the anger, but once the anger subsides, there's a calmness. There's
I think of like neutrality, right? Like peace came to mind when you're like, what's on the other side? I'm like, peace. And when I think of peace, it's not like, oh, da, 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 right? It's like peace to me is just like, I'm just here. I'm just being. I'm not one way or the other. I'm not, upset or not. I'm just being. And that neutrality, I think, is ultimately when I think of what's on the other side of anger, or we think sometimes, what do they say? And I might not get this correct, but they talk about like what's on the other side of, I'll have to come back to it, but what it's like, it's not what we think it is, right? It's actually just neutrality. And
like the other side, I think I know what you're talking about. I think it's either a Buddhist philosophy or it might be Hindu, about the other side of hate isn't love.
yes,
The other side of hate is
indifference.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. So that's what I think of with anger, right? It's just like, it's just
the other side of anger isn't necessarily happy. It's just a place of calmness, maybe. And so in Egypt, I had the experience. The ceiling fan was blowing in the way of I don't want. So I was very much in a lot of resistance phase. I've been past the freeze phase for a while. The numbing out, the distracting myself with my phone or drinking or playing or working or all the things that I did to distract myself in that numb state. I've been in that resistance phase, and each time I move towards anger, the predominant or prevalent experience that I had in Egypt was anger within me. It was, I don't want this. I don't want this to be my experience. And also I don't want to do what I'm perceiving other people want me to do, and feeling angry about that, which all was within me. It wasn't actually happening. And so that's when I use that experience to like, oh, okay, I'm going to practice being the subject of anger, because when I can be present with it, I can change it. If I'm not aware of it, I can't change it. If I'm not aware of it, I can't resolve a new way of dealing with it. So my awareness in Egypt was around that. It was around what I didn't want. And when I got to Annapolis, I was asking myself, like, why am I here? Am I really looking for a boat? I didn't say no to a boat, but I also had gotten to the point where I wasn't saying yes to a boat anymore either. And I was thinking, well, maybe I'll just move we'll just move to Maui in the interim until finding a boat becomes easier. Or maybe it's just easier to move to Maui or to find some other situation until Hu University is at a place where like I can be halfway around the world and it's not a problem. So why am I here? Why are we looking at boats? Well, a big part was because we were doing this with our friends that we met a year ago sailing, that we're living with right now, that like life has, our journey has brought along with this. And as is just about everything in my life, it's never really about the boat or the place that I'm going or the thing that I'm doing. It's about the relationships, it's about the emotions and the feelings. Like that is what I study. And so getting here and then saying, well, why am I here? What do I want? What do I want? You and I had a conversation not too long before I came to Annapolis where we were talking about travel and we were playing with like, what would it be like to do a year of travel? What would that look like? And you had said, well, because I was like, I'd need to find places that David could dive and take that into consideration. And you were like, well, what if it's just you and I at first? And then I found myself in this, I don't want to leave my husband out. I don't want to leave you out. And my focus was so much on you, Erin, and my husband, David, that I had not even asked, what do I want? Which then starts to freak me out because I'm like, I don't know. This is my gate 64. This is that confusion. This is that comfortable saying, in this moment, this is unclear to me. I do not know. So I think it was the second morning we were here. So the first day we came and we ended up doing the preview and I had to poop all day long. I was like in and out of the restroom like 5 or 6 times. At one point, our friend Greg, I was like, I need to go to the restroom. And he goes, again? Which I am now completely fine with. My husband's just like, yeah, she's got to go to the restroom again. Like, I know where all the bathrooms are now. Which is not where I was a year ago when we were in Fort Lauderdale. And I thought I was literally going to poop my pants. I'm like, why is it going to a boat show makes me need to poop? It's our survival response, right? Our body sometimes knows before we do. So Friday morning, I was asking myself, what do I want? What do I want? Do I want a boat? Do I not want a boat? Feeling afraid, feeling unclear, feeling uncertain. And I do pretty good with uncertainty, except for when I'm demanding to know an answer.
You are,
not,
or someone
yeah.
else is.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're expecting yourself to know and you don't have the answer, that's when you're like, don't like it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Why don't I know what I want? Everybody else knows what they want. Why don't I know what I want? Right. And of course, we get into our heads and we think that we're the only person. Okay, everybody else knows what they want. I'm the only one who has no freaking clue. Erin knows what she wants. She wants to travel. David knows what he wants. He wants to dive. What does Tanya want? Oh. So, this had me in tears Friday morning as I was also thinking about what did I want when I was a little kid? I wanted dance lessons. I got one, and um, and I had this one move that I just could not figure out, and I wanted so bad to go back so that I could practice this move and I could keep up with the rest of the dancers. But I didn't get to go back. Couldn't afford it. My mom didn't have the time to take me because she worked. She was a full-time working mom. So that morning was this kind of realization of course I stopped asking for what I want because I spent so much time either hearing no, that what I wanted was wrong, that we couldn't afford it, that I was bad for asking. And so I just stopped asking, what do I want? And it's not a skill that I've practiced as much.
I want
So
to
then,
interject. Is that okay?
yes, yeah,
Okay. So, because I have had those same, the list that you just listed, that is exactly what was told to me. And so I think it feels important to, you have people that know what they want, you have people that don't know what they want, and they both were shut down, probably
hmm
in very similar ways. What do you think is different about how I was shut down for the same reasons and knowing what I want, and you shut down for the same reasons and not knowing what you want?
nothing. There's no difference. We're the same, right? We're the same. We're absolutely the same. Your wants were like, you're not thinking of the greater whole. It's not responsible. We have to think of others. Mine was, we can't afford it. Um, I don't have the time, but it's still the same thing. It's,
Yeah.
and as confusing as this may sound to some of our listeners, I wouldn't have had it any other way. Because when we have that experience, it gives us the fuel, the fertilizer, the catalyst to either we're going to check out of here not having lived, or it might be the very thing that ignites the spark that says, okay, so this is how it was when you were little. How about now? What can you do now? Like, for me, a lot of my fire came from proving, and a lot of my fire came from the proving energy. Oh, you say I can't do this? Watch me, right? You say I can't have that? Watch me. Um,
Which is ego driven and not heart driven, right? Because
correct.
when this is very subtle, but this is the difference from, this is the calmness, the neutrality,
Mhm.
that's the heart centered. I want this because I want it, and I'm calm and I'm centered and it's neutral for me, and being unattached to it, right?
Yes.
Still wanting it doesn't mean, just because we're detached doesn't mean we don't want it. It just means that we don't need this to feel any certain way, versus
Yes.
versus the ego of, I'm going to prove you, because when I prove it, then I can feel righteous, validated, whatever we might be craving to feel. So
Yep. And
continue.
so that is kind of where I got to. So Friday morning, it went from what do I want to allowing myself to just be in that question. We talk a lot about being in the question and not trying to answer it from the mind, from the place of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
but from the heart. Like,
Yep.
so I sort of put that question out there, and we go through the show, and Friday afternoon we ended up um, going to the Fontaine Peugeot booth, and we walked through the Isla 40. We walked through the Elba 45, which is the predecessor to the Helia, which we had decided we loved, and we were thinking we wanted a Helia. Um, and then we went from the Elba and we moved on to the to the Tana, which is the predecessor to the Sayona. And I was sending you a Marco Polo from the boat going, yes, yes, yes. Like just the layout of the boat, how it felt, everything about it, I was saying yes to. And I had this, like, I was laying up on the um up the top, the sun deck by the helm. And I was remembering when we were in Mexico on the Helia looking up at the stars. And I was imagining I could live on this boat. It had a washer dryer, it had a dishwasher, which wasn't on my like must have list, but it was like bonus. Um, it had the layout that I wanted. There were just so many things about it that I just really appreciated. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in love with this boat. I could say yes, 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 yes to this boat. And you know, me with my sacral response is like, once it says yes, I don't have to wait. I don't have to ride any sort of waves on whether or not that is a true statement for me or not. The wave that I did have to ride then was the wave that comes up here in my mind, the thought wave. The thought wave went a little bit like, oh my God, I love this boat. How am I going to figure this out? And then I found a listing for 3 Sayonas that were, one was a 2020, one was a 2021, and I don't know what the year was of the others, that had all the things that the Tana had, were $1 million. One was in Greece, one was in Hong Kong, the other one isn't listed yet, but it's coming up from Australia. And I was just like, okay, if I said yes to this, I don't know how I'm going to get the money, but I don't need to concern myself with that because it's never been the money. Money always shows up when I need it to. Always.
I do want to say this because this is what we do. I think this is a whole nother topic for something else, but with finance and money, we are taught that you do have the money. It's just, is it in liquid assets the way that you want to use the money? That'll be like a whole
Yes.
podcast. Okay, go back.
So, so then our friends were like, hey, are you going to reach out to the broker? You going to talk to the broker? You're going to, like, what are you going to do? And these are our friends that have seen me go from, we're moving into your house because we're looking for a boat, to, I think we're just going to move to Maui for now, to, and now here I am going, yes, 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 yes to this boat. And so I'm having a little bit of mind drama over that. Then I talked to the broker, and the broker he was awesome. And he also said something that sort of had me going, which was when we were talking about, he's like, you don't have to put a deposit down, but you would want to make a commitment. If you're going to fly over to Hong Kong, you want to make sure that that boat's not going to get pulled out from underneath you. So you would want to have a agreed upon price. And I felt myself starting to backpedal. I felt myself starting to go, what? I don't know how I'm going to pay for this just yet. I believe that the money will be there, but I just noticed that kind of sensation or feeling that was coming up. And then the other thing that he said that really kind of had me was, he's like, you've got to have the nerve to pull the trigger. He said, you don't have to put a deposit down. And he said, the way I write my contracts, you have a personal clause. You could say, I don't like the color, I'm out, with no loss other than you made a trip to Hong Kong or to Greece. And so I was thinking about that. And that night after I conveyed the conversation to our friends Greg and Jen while we were having dinner, we were talking, and I had this moment of like, maybe this is too soon. Maybe this is like jumping too big of a jump to go to, we're going to get this 2020 or 2021. We're going to try and figure out the $1 million or whatever. And I was noticing again what I don't want about the financing. Like I was saying to David, I'm like, when we financed our cars, they didn't tell us where we could drive our car, what stereo system we could put in it, or, you know, what we could do with it. But when you buy a boat, when you go through a marine lender, it's different. They want to give you all kinds of restrictions and rules about where you can sail it and when and how, and then insurance. And anyway, so what I noticed was I was like, I fell in love with the boat, and then I was almost upset with myself for wanting it again. I was like, damn it, because I have all these obstacles and I don't know how. And I also realized that there was some fear surfacing with having what I want. What if I wreck it? It's practically a brand new boat. What if I don't like I don't feel like I'm experienced enough? Can I get a captain to come sail with us? Will David be like my head started doing all of this stuff and my heart was like, well, see what happens when we decide that we love something or that we want something. This is what happens. So,
And this is what I think, this is the practice, right? I think a lot of people, listeners, I'd be happy for you guys to pipe in, tell us what you think about this. But I think a lot of people they stop wanting, they stop going after things because those feelings that it brings up, the doubt, the fear, the uncertainty are sometimes too, those are stronger feeling emotions than maybe where we are already sitting in right now, right? So when we start really going for big things, and a lot of times people think, oh, well, this is something's off because I'm feeling this, right? I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling doubt. I'm like you just said, like your brain was like, maybe you're going too big, maybe you're right. Like that is our brain, our primitive, right? Trying to keep us just where we are and safe. It comes from a safe place. But the more that we can get practiced at taking the action, feeling the fear, that it's never going to go away, right? Like it is
nope.
never going to go away. But we can kind of be onto ourselves when it comes up, and we get better at feeling like we've talked about shame before. It doesn't feel as intense as it used to feel in my body. The same thing with fear is like, it's there, it's noticeable. But it's not like how it used to be where it was completely debilitating and it would just shut me back down and keep me exactly where I was.
Yeah. So what I was noticing was, when I started, those pieces started coming up, and I was like, okay, Tanya, we had been listening to the O'Kellys, their YouTube channel that we follow, and Megan O'Kelly had said something that I've heard many, many times, and I've probably said myself, which is, if your dreams don't scare you, they're probably not big enough. They should be big enough to scare you. And I was like, okay, so what about this is scaring me? And I realized it was like I had this like I use my imagination to sort of like rehearse. And I imagined our friend Greg saying, like, if I backed up about the catamaran and said, well, maybe we could just get a monohull that we could practice on for a little while, or maybe we could, do some more charters or whatever, whatever kind of regression I moved to, of him saying, why can't you make up your mind? What's wrong with you? Why do you keep changing your mind? Like, and
Is
almost
this you
me,
imagining it, or this is
yes,
what he actually,
yes.
okay.
This
Okay.
is me imagining, um, like him somewhat almost attacking me, like, why are you so fickle? Why are you so wishy-washy? Why can't you make up your mind? And
Yeah.
then thinking about like when the broker said, you got to have the nerve to pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my husband, as far as the broker and all of that was concerned, I was like, I'm going to go talk to him. He has gotten so much more relaxed over, like, in the very beginning of this journey. If I changed my mind about anything,
Yeah.
he would be like, stop pulling the rug out from underneath me. Like, change was not okay. And he's gotten so much more comfortable with that, that he was just like, yep, just let me know when you decide something that's actually going to involve or impact me. And, you know, I'll be down for that. But until then, like, you just do you. So I came to this point of just being like, okay, I'm realizing that part of what I'm having is fear. Fear of having what I want, fear of stepping into the unknown. And of course, that's coming from a safe place, or a place of my past experience. Like, this is how we did in order to stay safe, is we squelched our desires. We said no to what we want, and recognized that I was in that space of being afraid to do that, to make the choice and to say, yes, I want this, and trusting that it will work out the exact way it needs to. And so some of the things that were starting to come up for me, we've been here, you know, watching YouTube channels in between, and I've seen a number of YouTube channels where girls are out by themselves, sailing across the oceans, single-handing their own boats. And while we were also thinking about, like, what would it be like to be able to charter the boat to take people that either are working with us in Who University out on an adventure, something that gets them outside of their comfort zone, and thinking about maybe chartering people that wanted to go diving with my husband. I'm like, well, what do we need for that? We need a 6-pack, what's called a 6-pack captain's license. And I was like, oh, well, David could get that. And then I started asking myself, why wouldn't I get that? If what is feeling scary is not feeling confident enough to be out on a boat, why wouldn't I face those fears? Why wouldn't I, if what I truly want is this boat, what I really want is to feel confident on that boat. I really want to feel at home on that boat. I really want to feel at ease on that boat. So what do I need to do to create those feelings within me? And that's part of what I was exploring last night, when I either unintentionally, unconsciously, whether I picked a fight with my husband or whether I just sort of stumbled into one, created that experience to where I had the opportunity to practice being on the receiving end of the anger. And yeah, so that's a little bit about where I'm at right now, which then had me today contemplating freedom to be who we are. This is an expansion of Egypt. How free are we to be who we are, to say what we want? And when someone else gets angry, how are we able to, like, be on the receiving side of that? And not saying that I was trying to receive his anger, but feeling safe enough within my body that I can make other people angry, which I can't really do, right? I have no control over how somebody else feels, but that I can create an experience that seems like I've made someone angry and still be okay.
Just being present with other people's anger, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is going to be important, because if we're out at sea and some shit goes down, and, you know, there's only so far you can go to opposite ends of the boat.
Yep.
You laugh, but you know what I'm talking about.
I also want to to point out too, you made this comment, and I think this is so important. People think they're afraid of failure. We are really afraid of success because success takes you out of the tribe, air quotes, right?
Yep.
It makes you different, air quotes. All of these things that we have been so conditioned to not do. And we think we're afraid of failing, but we're really afraid of, like, if it goes right, then I lose connection. Then I don't get to, the brain will come up with all of the reasons, right? And this is why also I think it's important for us to not solve for, right? Because notice what your brain was doing. It was like, oh, okay, well then I won't get the bigger boat. I'll just go do this boat. But there's still going to be, your brain is still going to throw up another reason, right? Of why that doesn't seem like a good idea. And so we're just constantly in this little chase. What do you want to say?
For those of you listening, my head's just bobbing. Yes, 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 yes,
right?
laughing.
So the practice is not to dim down our dreams or to figure out another way to go about it. I think it is to stay committed to what we want, and then to allow that to surface, and then to work through, and then to learn how to feel the calmness, to learn how to feel confident, to learn how to, because there's so many things that aren't going to, my dad used to say some things we don't agree upon, but there is one thing that I do agree with him, is like, you can't wait for all of the lights to turn green before you leave your house, right? And this is what we try to do with sometimes our feelings, is we try to make everything just so before we take the leap off, or, off of the dock, or, your parachute, it doesn't work if you pull it and then you jump. You have to jump, and then the parachute opens up for you. So it's getting practiced of, I'm okay no matter what happens. I am willing to feel what I need to feel in order to have the life that I want to have.
Yep.
So fear of success.
Balls. Sweaty, stinky balls. Yes, it's hard. And yeah, that's been a big part of my going to bed last night when my husband was still angry, and um, feeling the intensity of his anger, which I this morning found out how he perceived I thought it was something simple, innocuous, of just making him aware where maybe there were some double standards in some of the ways that he responded to me about certain things. And his perception was that I attacked him. And when I went to bed last night, I had so much love and compassion for his response. Like, of course he would be mad, and I didn't know the attacked part at that point. Of course he would be mad. Of course he would feel angry because he feels like I'm telling him he's wrong. And I created a separation by saying, sometimes I think you think you're better than me, or more right than me. And when I got to bed last night, he was still mad. And I just had so much love and compassion for how he was feeling, and I could completely understand. So when I did talk to him earlier this morning, and he conveyed how he was feeling, that he was still mad, that he felt attacked, I was able to just be with that. I offered that I have no power to change how he feels. I did offer that, I can understand. I can understand his anger. I can understand like I can conceptualize, I can imagine why he might feel that way from some of his past experiences, but I have no power to fix it or change it. And, so I went for a walk today, and it was while I was sitting in front of the Annapolis Capitol building, which used to be the capital for all of the United States. I was thinking about the ghost walk that we had gone on a few nights before, where I was asking myself, why are we still on this walk? When all of us are like not enjoying ourselves, why are we staying? And I asked Greg, I asked Jen, and I asked David each, why are we staying for this when none of us is enjoying it? And they all said something similar, like, we already paid for the tour. It would be rude to walk away. It would be like, it might hurt her feelings, the person who was doing the tour, which I found fascinating and interesting, like the things that we do because we're worried about how somebody else might feel or perceive our actions, and then we keep ourselves doing something we don't want to do. So as I was sitting in front of the Annapolis Capitol, I was contemplating freedom, because one of the things we did learn in the ghost tour was that, our founding fathers of the United States were at those buildings and were creating the Declaration of Independence, and, just thinking about that history. And so I started just contemplating what does it mean to be truly free? And in responding to someone, I had done a Facebook Live yesterday about what does it really take to get on a boat. It's not the money, and it's not the time, but it's resolving all the feelings or being able to deal with whatever we're feeling. I was responding to somebody about expectations, and I had said something about, we are oftentimes looking for freedom outside of ourselves, freedom to be who we are, freedom to express whatever it is that we want to express. And we're looking for freedom outside of us. But really, that freedom has to come from within us. Because if something someone says triggers us into a place of anger, if something someone does triggers us into a place of anger, and we are stuck in that reaction, then trying to get the other person to change or feel different or have a different experience is impossible. We have no agency or control over that. Zero, none. The only control we have, and it's not even really control, but the only choice we have is to try and manage, resolve, transform those emotions within us. So this experience here while being in Annapolis has been about asking for what I want, noticing all the feelings that come up, how other people might be upset with me if I'm not doing what they want or how they want or saying what they want. And being able to resolve those feelings of fear, inadequacy within me so that I can keep moving forward. Like that's everything, to find that freedom within ourselves, freedom to be who we are, freedom to want what we want, and to have the ability to move through whatever emotions that brings. And I think that sums it up, right?
Yeah. The practice and ultimately how that creates the freedom within us.
Yeah.
Okay. Until next time.
Until next time.